suppressing information is a tactic for powerful people to get their way and do their corrupt things. Another thing, though, is that spilling information like it's a faucet, putting out so much information at once that people cannot keep up, is also another tactic for corrupt people to do their bullshit. What's going on, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of Finally I Can Talk, a podcast where a former journalist has everything that she's been wanting to say. I'm your host, Kenya Hunter, and you are tuned in to episode 11, episode 11. Woo! Thank you so much for joining me. Remember, you can follow me personally across all platforms at Kenya the Hunter. You can also follow the podcast at Finally I Can Talk on Instagram and TikTok. And you can also go to the Substack. We're also now on YouTube, so look up Kenya the Hunter. That's my username on here as well. Again, across all platforms. And you'll find the podcast here every Friday, as much as I have bandwidth for, because, you know, sometimes I be bugging. But, you know, life be lifing. Remember, if you want the podcast straight to your inbox, go to www.finallyicantalk.com. That's the Substack. And if you subscribe there, whenever I upload the audio version, you will get that straight to your inbox. Thanks so much for joining me. And we're going to go ahead and get right into it. So this is what I'm going to do. So today, and maybe for the rest of the time of Finally I Can Talk, I think I'm going to try something new. So I really like pop culture and I really like politics. And sometimes I'm like, is this a politics podcast? Is it a pop culture podcast? But the truth of the matter is, it's a current events podcast. I think I'm going to try to do two different segments because the truth of the matter is, this is not a pop culture podcast, nor is it a politics podcast. It's really a current events podcast. That means anything can go. Not anything, but just the things that are happening in the world, whether it is political or if it's pop culture related. Sometimes there's some stuff going on in pop culture that I don't really care to talk about. Sometimes there's some stuff going on in politics that I don't really care to talk about. And so I think a good mixture would be to have a pop culture segment, a politics segment, and then a Kenya Yaps It Up segment. Either way, we're going to be talking because the podcast is called what? Finally, I Can Talk. So we're going to go ahead and get right into the pop culture segment, which I don't have a name for. So we'll just call it the pop culture segment. So the first thing I want to talk about is, let me get my notebook. So Mona Leo. Y'all know I love me some Mona Leo. Mona Leo, as y'all know, I don't have to tell you, Mona Leo just came out of recovery and posted on social media for the first time after a month hiatus because she was in the hospital for a cyst on her ovaries, and she ended up losing a ovary and a fallopian tube. It was so sad. She ended up having to cancel the tour because of it. And let me tell you, I went on that tour twice. I saw Mona Leo 2 times in Atlanta, and she just puts on such a great show. It gets better every single time. I hate that she had to cancel the tour for people that were really excited to see her, but you know, your health comes first. She went on TikTok Live a few days after and gave us some insight about her experience in the hospital and all the things. Basically, they were trying to send her home when she seriously needed surgery. She needed an emergency surgery. And she detailed the whole thing, and it was pretty sad. I'll put a clip in, and y'all can watch for yourselves.
We do a CT scan, and then they move me into a room, and then they're like, "Oh, we see you have a cyst on one of your ovaries, and we're thinking maybe it might have twisted, but we still see that there's some blood flow to your ovaries, so we're not going to do the surgery here." And I was like, you're definitely doing the surgery. You're doing something. I'm not leaving this place without something going on. Like, whatever's paining me needs to be removed immediately, and I'm not playing. Like, I'm not leaving here without some type of surgery being done, because I don't feel safe. If I leave here, I'm going to die. I'm literally saying if I leave here, I'm going to die. So they're like, well, there's a hospital nearby that can do it. So I'm like, well, I guess that's where we're going.
So being somebody in the doula space, in the birth work space, and understanding how intense it can be to get something done like that, I really am sad that the data just shows itself to be true in Mona Leo's experience. It is really sad that her pain was being dismissed. It is really sad that a healthcare worker was rude to her, because she did mention that, a healthcare worker being mean to her. It's really sad that when a Black woman is trying to advocate for herself, she has to go 10 times harder than anybody else would have to. It is disgusting, and it's something about our society that seriously needs to change. I think that Mona Leo is divinely protected, for one thing, because it's a blessing, because this is a ruptured cyst can be a life or death situation. So I'm very glad that Mona Leo stuck up for herself. I really encourage us to do the same. I know that it's easier said than done to advocate for yourself in a medical setting. I've been in situations, especially when the staff is being rude to you. And also, like, let's note this. Sometimes it be the Black staff in the medical facility that be being mean to the Black people because of some internalized anti-Blackness that they got going on. Like, a lot of times we are advocating for Black doctors, Black health professionals to be there. And I think that's beautiful, and I think that's a great thing. But the reality is that sometimes Black doctors are also doing things that doctors who would be racist towards us are doing. Black nurses will be mean to us. And so it's really about advocating for yourself no matter what. And I think that you kind of have to put yourself in a position where, be kind when you go in, but you also have to put yourself in a position where, like, they need to prove that they're trustworthy. You know what I'm saying? Like, health professionals have to prove that they're a trustworthy person, given so much of our history in medical settings. I'm actually reading Medical Apartheid right now for my doula cohort. And I mean, Black people definitely have some of the biggest, Black people definitely have the most distrust of any group when it comes to the medical setting. And it's rightfully so. But I also think that distrust has done irreparable harm. It's how we get, and some of y'all might jump me, but I don't care. It's how we get a Dr. CB in the world. God rest his soul. It's how we get Dr. CBs in the world. It's how we get TikTok creators giving us just any information and selling us stuff. It's how we get to over-relying on holistic treatments and not getting medical treatments. I think that being a doula and being someone, I used to be a public health reporter. So I believe in all of it. I believe in the holistic methods. I believe in getting the medical stuff done when you need to. I believe in having the knowledge so you can gauge it for yourself, but also having your own intuition about yourself as well, so you know what's right for you and what's wrong for you. But again, it's easier said than done, right? That navigating the space. One thing I want people to know is this. You're allowed to ask questions when you go to the doctor, because I know some people that will go to the doctor and it's for something pretty serious, it seems like, and they come back and nothing gets fixed. And I'm like, so what happened? You didn't ask any questions? I'm like, no, the doctor said I didn't need anything else. But it's like, in a world where doctors are so stressed out, nurses are so stressed out, you do unfortunately have to do some more advocating for yourself. You do. You just do. So shouts to Mona Leo for advocating for herself and making sure that she was good. Shouts to her team for making sure she's okay, her husband Stunna, and just prayers for healing all over. She's clearly been great in recovery. She just met Beyonce. And Beyonce smiled big for Leo. I seen her. Beyonce was smiling big for Leo. You know, she did a little Houston thing. She did a thing where she put the over her eye like that, and then, you know, the little Houston side. It was cute. It was very cute at the sacred event. But that's all I have on Mona Leo. Make sure you advocate for yourself when you go into these hospitals, and do what's right for you. Be in touch with yourself so you can do what's right for you. Next on the docket is boy rap stuff. So I didn't talk about this the other week because I don't really be paying attention to boy rap at all. Boys, when they rap, it's guns, it's bitches and hoes. It's just a lot. Now, there is some boy rap that I do be shouting to the top of my lungs. And Back in Blood by Pooh Shiesty is one of those songs. And Pooh Shiesty, we'll do the top of the news first, because we all know that Pooh Shiesty allegedly, along with his father and another man named Big 30, robbed Gucci Mane. The news here, because I'm like 2 weeks late, the new news is that Gucci Mane allegedly gave a statement, and that's how Pooh Shiesty ended up getting arrested. Gucci Mane gave a statement to the Dallas Police Department because this robbery did take place in Dallas, and it was because Pooh Shiesty went out of his contract, so he held a gun up to Gucci's face and was like, yeah, sign these release papers. And then he like looked at his daddy and was like, are these papers good? And then his daddy was like, no, it needs to be dated. And then he said, boom, put the date on it. So Gucci gave a statement, and this is the thing. The other thing is that this all allegedly happened back in January, and it had been in the streets. Now, I didn't know. I didn't hear about this until Pooh Shiesty got arrested, and along with his other gang member friends. Now, when I first heard the news that maybe Gucci had snitched, when I first heard the news, I was like, oh my God. I was like shocked. I was like, did Gucci tell on them? Wow, that is so unlike Gucci Mane to tell to the police. And then I had to stop for a second because I'm from the suburbs. I'm from the suburbs. None of this is stuff that my opinion matters. My opinion does not matter. I don't really, like the concept of being robbed and then I not call the police is genuinely crazy to me. Like, if you rob me and I make it out, I am gonna tell. I'm gonna call the police because, like you robbed me. This was a very serious situation. You held a gun up to my head. This is really serious. I'm gonna have to call the police. And I'm not somebody. I don't just go talk to the police. I don't. But if you rob me, you break into my house, you steal my things, you flash my jewelry, I'm gonna tell. So I think the thing is, though, I feel like more people should take on my mindset, which is that if you are from the suburbs, if you are someone who is not in the streets, if you don't live a street life, why are you sad that Gucci Mane told? Why? I think what's always been so weird about some of this, and I felt similarly about the Gunna and Thug situation when Gunna took that plea. I'm just like, y'all are not from the hood. And I'm not talking to y'all who are from the hood. If you are, I'm presuming you may not find anything I'm talking about interesting because people from the hood tend not to like me, so unless they're related to me. But other than that, they tend to be a little annoyed with me because I'm like all bubbly and suburban, and my favorite show is Friends. So, and don't judge me. It's been my favorite show since I was 14. But I do feel like it's too many people that I know for facts grew up in solid living arrangements, privileged lifestyles, And so for me, I'm just a little unclear about why you're disappointed in Gucci Mane for telling. Because you would do the same thing. I felt the same way about Gunna, because with Gunna, it was like, oh, he's a rat. I'm never listening to his music again. And it's like, Gunna does not know who you are. Thug is not going to give you $5 million because you two are mad at Gunna. That's just not how it works. It's just not, that's just not how it's going. And so, yeah, again, me from the suburbs, I said, let me keep my opinion quiet. I made a tweet about it, and I was like, actually, let me delete this because nothing I say matters. Kenya from the lily white suburbs, nobody cares what you had to say about this. So yeah, but I just figured I'd update y'all on that news. But that's the pop culture segment. So for politics, I only have one thing to talk about with politics and current events. And that is something that's pretty near and dear to my heart. So some Black midwives are suing the state of Georgia because they want to be able to practice with their full autonomy. So right now in Georgia, and this happened last week, and I really wanted to talk about it because there are some people in the birth world who really matter to me who are involved in this effort, and I think it's important when it comes to birth because okay, here's how it goes. I'm a doula, and then there's midwives. Those are the alternatives when you want to give birth but you don't want to do it in a hospital. A doula is not a medical professional, so I'm not a medical professional. I don't come to your home and catch the baby. I don't give you medical advice. I don't perform C-sections. I don't perform vaginal births. I don't do any of that because that's not what my training is. My training is to give you emotional support, help you with holistic methods like giving you things like tea, massages, physical comfort measures when you're in labor at the hospital, like squeezing hips, massages on the lower back, and the womb massages. Those are things that we do. And we also advocate for your birth plan. So if you have a birth plan and it's like, I don't want to have a C-section, we say, look, she doesn't want a C-section. They don't want a C-section. It's because when you're in birth, you're obviously in a very vulnerable space and you have all these people telling you different things. And it's just a way to kind of have like a stopgap between, so you can have someone there advocating for you. Then a midwife is a more medical profession. And they do catch babies and they do medical things and they can help you with birth. They can stitch you up, all of that. And a doula can assist a midwife. In Georgia, you have to have a nursing degree in order to practice. In other states, you can have a license and you don't have to be a nurse midwife. You can just be a midwife. And that's something that Black communities have done for a long time. There's the concept of granny midwives, which is where doulas come from. But when we did not have access to hospitals because of segregation and, prejudice and things like that, you had a granny midwife come and help you. And they also helped you spiritually and physically and mentally and all of the things. So I think Georgia can be, and this is a lot of states, there's a lot of restrictions on how we can practice birth. And I don't think it's fair. I think it's unfortunate because there are so many people who really do want different options aside from being in the hospital. When I was a public health reporter, I've talked to women who have been in hospitals, given birth in hospitals, and they swore they would never give birth in another hospital again. They would only do home births because of how they were treated. And so I think that in many aspects, when it comes to birth, we've gotten away from the spiritual parts of it. And it's just such a medical thing. It's treated like like pregnancy is an ailment, and it's not that. Pregnancy is a natural thing that happens when you have a uterus. It's not, I mean, yes, technically you are disabled when you are pregnant, but it's not an ailment. It's not an ailment at all. And when you go to a hospital, you're getting the medical things. And I think you do need the medical things, but it's not a holistic thing. So when you have, my opinion is that when you have your doctor, your midwife, and your doula, you have a holistic birth team. That is my opinion. So, like I said, people who don't have nursing degrees can't be midwives in the state, even though they have significant training. You have to go to midwifery school in order to become a midwife, and you are trained extensively. And it's for people who have healthy pregnancies. And if you're high risk, I think there are some midwives that do high risk pregnancies, but most likely you're going to end up going to a hospital. And there are just so many beautifully skilled midwives in the state of Georgia, Black midwives specifically, who are not allowed to practice because they don't have a nursing degree. And I think that's unfair. So these midwives sued the state, and they are trying to ensure that they can practice. Because right now, if you practice as a midwife without a nursing degree, if you're not a nurse midwife, you can end up in prison. You can end up going to prison for practicing in a certain way. And that is not right. That is absolutely not right. People deserve to be able to choose how they give birth. People should be able to have whatever midwife they want. And there also should not be so many restrictions on birth and birth workers. I understand that, there are lanes, right? There are lanes. But midwives and doulas are the only ones who are not allowed to practice in their lanes. And I think that's my issue with it. We're like so restricted on how we can practice. Doulas not so much, but midwives who are not nurses cannot practice how they see fit. And that isn't okay. It takes away from so many traditions that are outside of the hospital. And like I said before with Mona Leo, Black folks have some of the highest mistrust in the medical system, and it's for good reason. You read Medical Apartheid, and they're talking about the ways that they experiment on Black people, and then you hear about these maternal mortality rates, and so of course you may be looking into something different if you're Black and having a baby. And so I think it's a good thing that the state of Georgia is being sued by these Black midwives. I am grateful for the women like Mama Saran. Shouts to Mama Saran and all the other plaintiffs in this case, and I'm excited to see how that progresses. On to the yap session, and I'm not gonna hold y'all too long because I feel like finally I can talk. Boy, do I be talking. On Finally I Can Talk, but it's like I've not been able to say what I want for so long. I have so much to say. What I want to talk about today is just the state of the world and how we have just really accepted way too much to the point that it's unlivable. A few days ago on Twitter, a young man, I don't know that yet, Black Jesus, I think is his name on Twitter, was talking about the rent. Now, last week I touched on the rent a little bit, and then this conversation about rent blew up. But I touched on the rent a little bit because of the student loan stuff. We know our student loans are coming back, and I mentioned in the episode last week that we clearly have the numbers to do some kind of strike, clearly. So this rent conversation comes up on Twitter, and I mean, it went crazy. It went crazy. So bro said $1,500 for a 2-bedroom, 2-bath is kind of crazy. And people got to calling him all kinds of everything but a child of God. Got to calling him all kinds of brokies and poor, and just basically implying that if he thinks $1,500 is expensive for a 2-bedroom, 2-bath, he doesn't have any money and he needs to figure out how to make some more. Okay, so obviously $1,500 is a good price for a 2-bedroom, 2-bath in today's economy. The likelihood is, if depending on where you are, I don't want to talk to you folks that live in New York City and LA and Boston. I know that a 2-bedroom is like basically $1 million by the time you've paid all of your rent. I know. I used to live in Boston. My God, I used to live in Boston. I used to pay $700 for my room when I lived in Boston. And I remember I was trying to apply for a job there, and it was going to be 40,000. And mind you, it would have been my first job if I got it. Mind you, they asked me to apply, and I didn't get the job. But they were trying to pay me 40,000, and I thought that was great. I was like, oh my gosh, this is great. This is fantastic. Oh boy, how I would have been on the streets in Boston if I had let that happen. Mind you, I did go through a little stint in Boston where I was almost on the streets, and it wasn't because of money. It was because someone terrorized me and my roommates, and it wasn't safe to stay there. But that is neither here nor there. But obviously, $1,500 in a city like Atlanta, in a city like Detroit, in a city like any city that's not any city that's not LA or New York or Boston, you get a 2-bedroom, 2-bath for $1,500. There's a strong chance you may be in the ghetto, because now a 2-bedroom's going for like 2 bands, $1,000 a bedroom, and people got to calling them all kinds of broke. And I get that that's a good price in today's economy, but clearly that wasn't the point. Clearly, the point was that when you think about it, when you really dig in, the rent is too damn high. Bring back the rent is too damn high party. You know, that used to be a political party, that the rent was too damn, the name of the party was the rent is too damn high party. Bring that back. I'm trying to vote for that silly man, because he was really silly. Did he die? No, so it was founded by Jimmy McMillan III, and he is indeed still alive. And it appears that the rent is too damn high party is still a thing. He ran for mayor of New York in 2013, and then he ran for governor of New York in the 2014 election, but he didn't make the ballot. In 2016, he ran for president for the Republican nomination, actually, but he withdrew. And then he endorsed Donald Trump. Okay, so, but other than that, I feel the message. I get the message. The rent is too damn high. While there were many people that called this young man a brokey, and called all of us who agreed with him brokey, and they talked a lot of shit, and I said, who you think you is? Not your bitch. Shout out to Lotto. While there were many people that were calling us broke, and while there were many people who were saying, like, if you think that's too much, you ask for too much, there was also a side of people who were like, no, the rent is high. We cannot live our lives. The rent is high. The groceries are high. I said it last week. The rent is high. The groceries are high. Everything is high. It's all too high. And people started calling for a rent strike. And that's something that I would love to do personally. But when people got to also saying, oh, y'all must want housing to be free. Yeah. The responses to the tweet made me realize that we have gotten way too accustomed to prices just going up with no clear explanation as to why. We have clearly gotten used to being priced out and having to figure it out, so much so that it's a character flaw if you can't figure it out. But the fact of the matter is, like, there are a lot of people who have jobs, are homeless, they are living in cars. And I think people may not realize that, because homelessness is such a complex thing. Homelessness is such a complex thing. Homelessness doesn't look how we always think it looks. Someone at your job could have very well showered in a shelter because that's where they slept last night, and then came to work, and then they spend the whole day hoping they get a bed at the shelter. Someone may have drove to work after showering at a 7-Eleven, and once they get back in their car, that's it for the day. You know? And so the thing that I really wanted to say this week was, we don't have to accept this. We don't have to accept this. this. I touched on this a little last week, but we don't have to accept the state of the world. We know the rent is high. We know that groceries are out of this world. We know that gas is out of this world right now because of a war that we didn't want and we didn't ask for. We know that the rent is violence. We know that being locked out of opportunities as Black people to be able to own our property is violent. These are things that we know, but yet we have accepted them because we're being sold hopelessness in a way. I remember when the first time President Trump was elected, I remember there just being lots of despair. I remember all the executive orders. And I mean, think about it now, right? Like, remember, a bunch of executive orders, a bunch of news just being put out there every day. So much so that people were like, I have to disengage from the news. Now, I wasn't in a place where I could because I'm a journalist. I can't disengage from the news. So I'm consuming all this stuff still, to the point like, it's like, damn, this is depressing. The world sucks. And oh, well, I guess we just gonna have to figure it out. And I remember the same thing happening in 2024, 2025, right? When he came back into office, just all this information being thrown at us, And one of the things that I think we need to remember or need to understand is this. Information is so key. And the way that information is shared so that people understand that information is also key. Suppressing information is a tactic for powerful people to get their way and do their corrupt things. Another thing, though, is that spilling information like it's a faucet, putting out so much information at once that people cannot keep up, is also another tactic for corrupt people to do their bullshit. Because it puts us in a state that there's so much happening that what protests do we go to? What do we protest? What do we put on the signs? What do we fight against? I don't even know. I'm tired from even just reading it. The blue light on my screen is making my eyes tired. This is making me sad. It is hurting my heart. I need to exit. So much so that you don't even want to hear the information anymore. When we understand that's a tactic to keep us in a state of despair so that we don't have the energy to fight, maybe we'll find some energy to fight. And doing things like that, that's about checking in on places that maybe is synthesizing the information. Like Phil Lewis's newsletter, for example, what I'm reading. A place where you can get short bites of the stories happening with issues that are impacting folks in the Black community. That's maybe going to the Associated Press and reading an abridged version of an article. That's maybe checking Twitter and checking the moments to see if you can get a short version. And that's also like pacing yourself too, right? Figuring out what issues do I care about so I can look this up for myself. And then if you decide that you're the person who can synthesize the information, maybe you synthesize it and you give it out to your friends so they know what's going on in the world. But the point is, we don't have to accept what's happening. But the first way that we cannot, the way to get to a point where we decide what we do and don't accept is to know what's happening in the first place. And in this world where journalists are being laid off, like we just saw the Associated Press, disclaimer, my former employer, is preparing to offer buyouts to lots of journalists, hyper-local journalists. And so then how do you find out what's going on in your community? When you don't have time to go to the city council meeting, when you don't have time to keep up with what's going on in the state house. How do you keep up? Just know there's someone keeping up. So look into that, because you have to know what's going on in order to accept or not accept what's going on. The other thing I'll say is clearly we have the numbers. I saw a lot of people say when it came to this rent discussion, the student loan discussion, the food and the groceries discussion, the war discussion. There's nothing we can do. So are you going to complain or are you going to make more money? And one thing about it, I'm real good at complaining until I get my way. Ask them people that went to college with me. Real good at it. So yeah, I'm gonna complain and I'm gonna protest and I'm going to voice my concerns and my opinion. And I'm not only going to rely on elected officials to do so. I'm going to figure out a way for myself, and I'm going to figure out how can I organize the people around me who clearly don't want to accept this either. Because look, so many people were honest about the fact that, yeah, the rent is too high. Many people are paying well above 30% of their income for the rent. There are places who are organizing strikes right now, and we need to tap into those places because we don't have to accept this rent being this high. Granted, yes, it'll take a lot of work to organize a national rent strike, so much so that it sounds impossible if you've never organized before. But imagine if Martin Luther King Jr. or Malcolm X had that same attitude. You know what I'm saying? Imagine, where would we be? I'm trying to say, this very big change happened that, like, we went from literal slavery, we weren't even human, to now, because of this long effort of organizing that didn't start with Martin Luther King, nor did it end with him, that Black people are now the creators of the culture. Just either today or yesterday, I saw that Mexico is now doing free healthcare for everybody. I'm sure that that's something that took some organizing and some effort. Yes, the United States government is a very powerful entity. But the fact of the matter is, it gets powerful by shaping the way that we think. When we place money, capitalism, when we place that as our self-worth, which we're taught to do, which is like, we're taught that, you know, our purpose in life, we got to figure that out so we can go to college. But the purpose in life is a job. Because your purpose in life may very well be not like a job. It may be doing things like a podcast where you're not making money yet. It may be feeding the homeless, which you're not going to get money for. It may be spirituality, which, you know what I'm saying? Like, not your purpose and your job are not the same. But in a society like America, where you have to get a job to be able to meet your basic needs, yeah, your self-worth and the amount of productivity that you can put out, that's what's valuable. That's why disabled people are not valued in society, because they literally are not able to be as productive as someone who is able-bodied. Well, not in the many ways that are valued at a minimum, is what I mean. And if we get rid of the mindset that the productivity that you put out, it's like a fault. If we get rid of the mindset that if you don't have a job, if you are not rich, if you aren't the most productive, if we get rid of this mindset that those things make you a moral failure, we'll get so far. If we really start to place value on what a human is and what humans need, we will get so far. But the fact of the matter is, we are conditioned to believe that if you don't have a job, that must be because you are lazy. If you aren't rich, it must be because you haven't worked hard enough. If you can't afford the rent, it must be because you didn't work hard enough. It must be because you mismanaged your money. When the reality is no. Many people cannot afford the rent. Many people cannot afford food. Many people cannot afford to go to the doctor. Many of us cannot afford our basic needs. And we also many people have not even heard of a concept of healthcare being a human right. And that's why we have to read. So, and even if the people around you aren't reading, maybe you are the one to read and learn about what's happening in other nations who have free health care, have free food, and take care of their elderly and the homeless, and maybe there's a low rate of homelessness. Maybe you're the one who reads and informs your friends and your community of that, so that way they understand that we don't have to accept this. Because we don't. People clearly don't like this. People clearly don't like the fact that life is expensive. People clearly want to be able to keep their money. They want to be able to build wealth for their family. They want to be able to have a stable life with the money that they earn and have fun with the money they earn. Like, yeah, they want to go get a little drinky drink. Yeah, they want to buy a new couch, a new bed, get the carpet replaced. And I don't know, like whatever people with money do. People want to do that. People want to do their hobbies. But they can't because they're so tired from work. They don't have time for hobbies. They don't have time for community. You understand what I'm saying? But there are clearly enough people who are irritated by this, but there are not enough people who are fed up. There are not enough people who understand that we're being screwed over. They think there's so many people who think that this is just okay. And I'm here to tell you that it's not okay. I'm here to tell you that we are being exploited. I'm here to tell you that we are being treated unfairly. I am here to tell you that as marginalized people, we deserve better. I'm here to tell you to have hope that things can change. That's what I'm here for. And I'm also here to tell you that that change does not only have to happen every 4 years during an election. It just doesn't. It just doesn't. When it comes to the student loan issue, how many Democrats have we heard talk about this? How often do you hear Democrats offer actual solutions that actually get done? When Barack Obama was president and he didn't codify Roe v. Wade into the Constitution, when he had the House, the Senate, and the White House, that was all the proof I needed to understand. Elected officials are not our end-all be-all. And they never were. The people who organized for Black rights were not solely focused on elected officials. I would argue they may not have even been that concerned about representation, having Black faces in elected positions. I would argue that perhaps they were more concerned about results. And I think we need to be the same. And that's part of why I don't hate the situation with TMZ right now, where they're asking members of Congress, like, yo, are you on vacation? Because I do think elected officials need to be a little more scared of when they don't meet our needs. Because that's what's happening. They're not meeting our needs, and it doesn't seem like they care. I just really want to emphasize that. We don't have to accept this. We have to have hope that things can change. We have to figure out who's organizing what. We have to keep our eye on the prize, which is freedom. We have to understand what's going on around us. And yes, I know that is hard. I know that's hard because the world is, the state of the world is awful. But we have to stay strong and we have to keep pushing forward. And we also have to keep a community around us so that way when it's time for us to tap out, like, yo, I don't have the bandwidth to keep up with what's going on in the world. I don't have the bandwidth to go to work today. I don't have this bandwidth. You have community around you who will support you. And having community around you will also keep you smiling and keep you hopeful. Because having your friends and your family around, you laugh and you might even forget for a second that the rent is $1,800 a month. You might not spend when you're with your people, you may not spend every waking moment remembering that there's not that much money in your bank account. You may not remember that. You'll just be happy that you're surrounded by love. I'm hoping to talk a little bit more about the power of community soon, but that's something I'm still learning too. But that's all I have for today's episode, y'all. Remember, you can follow me everywhere on TikTok, Instagram, wherever, at Kenya the Hunter. You can follow the podcast at Finally I Can Talk. And go to www.com. Go to www.finallyicantalk.com to get the Substack and get this straight to your email. Thanks for listening, y'all. Bye!